Hello, 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 and welcome to the Painted Bread Quarterly Slush Pile. We're so happy that you are spending some time with us today and listening to our editorial meeting on air. So that's what we do. We grab things out of the slush pile, all of the incoming stuff, and then we read it aloud on air, and we have an editorial meeting right in front of your face, or maybe in your ears. We're not on YouTube. We think about that sometimes, but then we also think, nah. So taking advantage of all, being at home and all that stuff. But anyway, uh I'm going to say that my name is Kathleen Volkmiller, and I am at home in Collingswood, and I am still in my pajama pants. Woohoo! And
Yay!
and I'm gonna bounce it up to New York and say, good morning, Jason.
Good morning. Hi, it is Jason Schneiderman. I'm happily in New York City. It is so cold here. But I kind of like it. It brings me back to my St. Petersburg winter of 98, 99, when this was just normal. Although there they don't actually they don't shovel the streets or salt the streets. You're just like you just watch people falling and breaking their hips. It's terrifying and horrible. But yes. But I was young and resilient. I have many stories about things which if I did now I would be broken, but at the time I was like made of rubber and just
Your,
bounced.
your your bones
Uh,
were still bouncy.
I was still bouncy. And I will toss it down to Samantha in, is it DC or Baltimore? I'm sorry. I'm like,
DC,
okay.
DC. Yeah. Hi, everyone. Jason spoiled where I am. So,
Oh, sorry.
but no, my name is Samantha Newcombower, and I am at right now the Cleveland Park Library in DC. And I am eagerly awaiting the snow this weekend as well. And I'm going to shoot it over to Lisa.
Good morning, everyone. This is Lisa Zirkle. I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina, where we are already expecting the metropolis to be paralyzed by any flake of snow and or ice. So keep us in your thoughts. We have maybe one snowplow in the entire city, so things will not go well. And I am going to send it up to Toby, where he is shivering in a robust 4 degrees, but he's got it under control.
Wow.
Yeah, cool. Well, it was 40 good. I think we're in the teens now, so it was. I guess I had an early start to my drive. But yeah, I think keeping with the winter theme, I did a lot of falling this weekend. I actually went ice skating for the second time ever. The first time I went ice skating was in 2019, and then I went ice skating again 2026 on Friday, and that was great. I spilled really hard once, but I think that was part of the learning process. And then I went cross country skiing for the first time because my wife just loves winter activities. I went cross country skiing for the first time ever. And I also managed to fall there too, which was great. Yeah,
What?
and I made
Wait,
it back. I made it back in one piece.
because I'm terrified of falling in skis. Like I won't ski
It
because like the
is
falling in skis seems like my ankles will break.
Yeah, I came close. I think you have it's I don't know. I guess I was being risky, but I was like, oh, that one could definitely have twisted my ankle if I had like, fallen on the skis the wrong way. But I don't know. God's grace, good luck, and soft snow might have been my saviors
At least
this
if you,
weekend.
yeah, a cross country skiing fall is not from such a great height or a great speed. So, right, as long as you don't twist your ankle, you're probably okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think this trying to manage one's control going downhill is the main cross country skiing thing. It's like, oh, can I survive this hill? Do I know how to slow down if it gets somehow too fast? And the first few times I did not, but then I think by the end of the day I could manage a hill, a minor hill.
yeah, yeah. Well, I'm glad you survived, and both of your ankles are intact.
Me too.
Yeah, let's say hi to Lily. Hi, Lily.
Hi.
I love that high. Lily's a little under the weather, so we're just gonna go with that high. I love that. That was perfect. Um, So I think all of our episodes are special. Slushies, that I'm always like, and it's a special episode. But today it's a special episode for two reasons. We are going to discuss a short story instead of some poems, which we don't do very often. I don't know. Like to have somebody count them up for me and see how many times a year we do stories, but not too often. So that'll be fun. And we're going to read part of it aloud to you. And then we're going to have a recording of the story at the end of this episode. And we also will have it on our website for you to click a clickable link and listen there as well, pbqmag.org. And speaking of PBQ, our author today is Patricia Q. Bidar. Patricia Q. Bidar. Did you hear that? Lisa called it to our attention that our author's initials are PQB. So PBQ is welcoming PQB and saying thank you so much for allowing us to discuss your story in front of whoever manages to listen in. So without further ado, I think Sam was voluntold to read some of it
I
to you.
was.
Just
Yeah.
so if you're driving right now or somewhere where you can't go read it, you can get a sense of it from the first couple pages. Thank you, Sam.
You're welcome. Okay. Colfax. Christina swallows the last of the loose pills from Julian's glove box. Within a few minutes, fresh energy blooms and fizzes within her. The sensation is of tumbling backward into space. Julian, a drug dealer so giant and peevish, the floor mats on the driver's side are bunched and ruined. Underneath his criminal veneer, Julian is just a mundane mammal who's driven Christina, an animal woman, to flight. Half an hour later, she's reached Colfax. In this heat, this place, the car has mashed against the gas station's cashier hut. Years ago, when Christina was growing up here, this was a drive-in theater with a massive image of a vaquero on a rearing steed. Sweltering nights, Christina would watch movies with her lonely mother. Car windows open wide, clasped in the smell of tomatoes, melons, and insecticide. Rain begins to pepper the hood. Christina rises into vegetal air. She doesn't recall opening the door. The window to the hut is dirty and rain-spattered. She peers between cupped hands at the empty stool inside, the bank of cigarette packs. Lightning cracks. After a few seconds, thunder rumbles. Christina presses her hand over her heart. Is she alarmed? Are the pills goosing her pulse? But she feels calm. The sky is a tight lid. It was a mistake, stealing Julian's car. Julian, who took her in, identified and claimed her after Christina finished her time and was so adrift and alone.
Well read.
Thank you so much. I could keep listening to you.
Nice reading, Sam. Thank you. I think we need to say that we're going to spoil things right and left. So if you want to read the whole story for yourself or have it read for you, hit the pause button now and go to the show notes or zip ahead to the end of the podcast so we don't blow it for you because we're about to give away important details.
Yeah, thank you for that. I should have mentioned that.
So I want to start because I just love this piece. When Lisa drew my attention to it, I would call it a piece of flash. And what ends up happening is Christina meets a little girl in under kind of a bus stop, and some other kind of strange things happen in the environment. And in my reading, it's unclear, right, if Christina is alive or dead after this crash, if this crash happened, etc. And so much kind of like, I think kind of quasi speculative fiction feels slippery, but this one didn't. Like it felt really very much like we don't know what's real or not, but the author still felt in control. And I don't know if you all kind of agree with that.
It's that joke about art film, right? Like, how do you know if it's an art film? If you don't know if the character's alive or dead at the end, it's an art film. Like Lost Daughter, is she alive? Is she dead? I don't know. It was an art film. Uh, yeah, so there is like a really, I mean, and it signals us from the very beginning. I mean, she's taking the pills. So whatever kind of hallucinogenic journey we're on, we've kind of been set up to know that this is sort of potentially a side effect of mind-altering substances, potentially what's actually happening. And, when you're on mind-altering substances, there's an interesting intersection of the two that keeps happening.
Yeah, it read to me almost like a piece of magical realism in that, most of it seems very grounded in the real world with these flashes of strangeness and altered states. Jason, as you mentioned, either chemically altered, or maybe as Sam entered, or as Sam added, altered by the state of the protagonist being dead or alive, and we don't really know. And I think that's really in good evidence. And this is jumping way ahead, but there's this one piece of dialogue that is kind of when Christina figures out that the girl that she encounters in this bus shelter might be her alter ego as a child. And instead of asking her, a direct question, she says, or well, it is a question, but instead of asking her a question about who she is, she says, "Did your mother tell you that people with 6 fingers and toes are giants sired by angels and human women?" Which I was like, "What? Where are we?" So that's kind of a moment that gets you into this kind of bizarre altered state, or really situates you there, and like, these are not normal times.
Yeah, I feel like I want to take advantage that we're talking about a piece of prose, but my biggest compliment to this piece is this reminds me so much of Louise Glück's poem, one of her late prose poems of Foreshortened Journey, where you have this old man on a staircase and he needs to sit down halfway, and then kind of above them is a grandmother and a daughter, and they're looking down on him and kind of saying like he needs to rest, we need to leave her alone. And then there's this kind of interaction with the girl that is a bit uncanny, and she sort of has a more adult voice than you would expect. And I always get the same feeling reading that piece, like, has he died? Like, are they on this kind of celestial sphere that's at at a heightened level? And I think that a lot of good flash is stealing from poetry in terms of like its compactness. And I think this piece really achieves that.
I mean, she actually says to the child, "Am
Mhm.
I that? Am I alive?"
Yeah.
She,
Yeah.
she, she actually raises the question quite literally, whether or not she has died.
Yeah, and I mean, it's actually pretty subtle, but I do like that moment where I guess it's the third paragraph on the first page. Sorry, the fourth paragraph on the first page where it says, "Rain begins to pepper the hood. Christina rises into vegetal air. She doesn't recall opening the door." Which could be like a description of somebody getting out of a car, but at this, it kind of becomes fully atmospheric and fully like mysterious, especially with the rain maybe also evaporating. So I like moments like that where it's like actually kind of towing that line where you can see it's kind of like, like poetry. You can kind of see the ways that the ambiguity of language also creates an ambiguity of location or movement. Yeah.
On a craft level, I'll say too that especially noting that place that you mentioned, Toby, there's such a great use of sound cues and smell cues. The smell of tomatoes, melons, and insecticide. It's just
Yeah.
like this fug, this fog of very dense air. It's just so well conjured.
So I don't know if I have to recuse myself, but I'm actually from Vacaville. And so the mention of Vacaville, which is kind of it did not used to be the middle of nowhere because it had like the nut tree and it had like the onion fields and it had like the onion festival and all this kind of stuff. But as I say this, you're like, Jason, that's the middle of nowhere. So I don't know. Like I have a retirement account from Vacaville from the time I was in a public service uh, miniseries in which teens learned about the city services. And you can like watch me at the firehouse and painting over graffiti. So I feel like on one hand I'm like, ooh, I do know this place. But on the other hand, I'm also going to play bad cop and feel like I don't love uncanny children. Like I just feel like uncanny children are sort of a shorthand. I don't know, like persuade me to not dismiss uncanny children.
Okay, first of all, can you define for me uncanny? What do you mean by uncanny?
I mean, a child who's speaking in adult terms, who knows more than they should, that the child, so the girl says, we live our lives with our ancestors as witness, right? That the child is sort of delivering wisdom, is sort of a seer, is in touch with some kind of supernatural or universal understanding. And of course, and with the ambiguity that, this is an actual child who she's having a conversation with, but also this is her spirit guide or imagination now that she's dead. Right. I mean, keeping those two things in focus. I don't know, like with that, I it seems unfair of me. So convince me that I'm being unfair and that I should
Yeah,
not.
because that's a trope, like the wise unhomed person, right?
Yeah.
The wise magical, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I feel that. Although I didn't think of this earlier than today, but I think it was Lisa who said that maybe the child is her as a child, is Christina as a child, and that helps a lot with the child's that's the only line for me too that doesn't sound like a child. That
Mhm.
one sentence, right? Which is coming right before the end. Um, but if you read her, if you read the kid as Christina as a child, does that help?
No.
Okay.
Sorry. Sorry.
Okay. What if does it help if you do believe the read that she's dead, which I think by the end it's pretty for me, I
Right.
wouldn't see an argument that she's alive.
Well,
I would find that
so,
harder to believe.
maybe I can shift it because I did want to talk about the ending as well and the way that the typeface itself
Yeah.
fades, and I
Yeah.
kind of wanted to know what the rest of the team thought of that particular use of the typeface for ending, or the
Well, first, I want to say what's interesting is I wonder how American it is to have these kind of child prodigies in stories. I mean, I think you get it a lot in Joy Williams, and because as a culture we value youth so much. Like I can't think of examples like, from like East Asia or something where you're getting these kind of child prophetesses. So I think that's kind of interesting. It definitely worked for me though, because um, of the eeriness of the piece and because in relative terms, I like this kind of child much better than like a cutesy child. So,
I agree with that, Sam, and I do kind of see her as a spirit guide. And I think maybe the moment that clinches that for me is when she feeds Christina the piece of churro, which seems like, okay, you've got to stay in the underworld once you eat, whatever food you're given in the underworld. It's a little bit like the pomegranate, I guess. And the way it's described, with the sugar and cinnamon confection, it's absolutely delectable and somehow still warm. It brings her back to this memory of her mother and, you know, uh, being cared for. So I think that's interesting. And I do share your resistance to uncanny children, Jason, but somehow I appreciated this girl and like her focus on the ants and how Christina kind of shared her um, attraction to all the different kinds of ants and almost flash back to her own memory. Like Christina knows all the ants. So that was another clue to me that, oh, this is a version of her as a child.
Yeah, I mean, also I mean, I think when I first the first reason I read the story, I was trying to figure out an early sentence. The car has mashed against the gas station's cashier hut, which, uh, you know, maybe softly it could be like parked against it, but mash seems like it's something like the car has crashed and the mistake she made taking the car is, led to this accident. So it doesn't seem like you would be able to have a conversation this calm with a child at the gas station after you just crashed into the cashier hut. So I think that that second life situation is helpful. And I think Jason's probably right to question like why does a child figure symbolize the afterlife, and how do you get to like how do and then for me actually the question at the end of the story is like how do you get to like a meaningful realization through this child. And I don't think the child is like necessarily a helpful vehicle. I mean, especially because the child has to say this like very abstract thing about living our lives as answers as witnesses. Um, and I don't know that then being able to say, "Oh, I'm finally free," is like a particularly rewarding endpoint for this conversation. It feels like there's moments where the stakes are so high. It's like, oh my gosh, our ancestors are our witnesses, and then like to kind of is maybe a little bit pathetic to come back to, oh, I'm free, or like I'm dead, and it's maybe it's fine. So yeah, and also I do question the choice to have the fading text that uh, suggests both ongoing history, but also like history's end at the same time. I was that kind of made me raise my eyebrow a bit.
Hey, Toby, could you describe the last bit there? Because
Yes.
unless slushies have seen it, they won't understand what you're talking about
Right.
there.
So I'll read the last sentence. So the second to last sentence begins, and then it is she and Christina and the animal female chain extending into and past the vanishing point. Girl, 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 girl. And as you get to the fourth girl in the sequence, the ink it looks like your printer kind of stopped working. The ink starts to fade. And the last girl is very, very faint, um, kind of evanescent suggestion of girl. So yeah, like both a diminishing sense of cyclicality and inheritance seems to be suggested by the text at the end.
I personally would like it to have ended on vanishing point. It's like my main quibble probably with the piece that, as I said, overall I really, really like. I think for me, just anytime I see kind of like text itself being played with, um, I like, I guess I like see the writer kind of writing on their computer in order, and I can't really escape that.
Interesting.
Yeah, I
Well,
have a Kathy.
I was just going to say that I kind of shrugged my shoulders and went, cool. Like it didn't, I thought fiction writers have a lot less opportunity for the most part of being clever in those kinds of ways, playing with font, playing with white space, that sort of thing. And for me, it deserved it because the rest of it, for me, it's uncanny, Jason. That for me, the line I really don't like is we live our lives with our ancestors as witness. That I think it's explication in the last quarter of the story, and all of that was there already. The female chain and all of that was here. She didn't need to say that, and that took that took me out. I didn't want that girl to say that.
Mm.
It felt like direct telling that this is what I'm getting at.
Well, I also I love the seduction with Julian at the diner where he's like, "You think no one sees you? I do, I do." Like, oh my God, like that was so intense and kind of fresh and exciting. And I sort of wanted more Julian, but I mean, because the story is an escape from Julian, and then the uncanny child becomes the kind of movement into our departure. I don't know. I do think there's like another way in which I was sort of I wanted more of that interaction with Julian, and then the child felt very familiar in terms of that conversation and the wisdom and the ants and the scene, whereas like the conversation with Julian felt really fresh to me and like terrifyingly.
Yeah, we didn't bring up that character at all. I love that character. I wish we had more time with him. What an interesting character, right?
And
Uh,
that's one thing I'll say about this story. It was always surprising. I could never guess where it was going to go. Like when we first hear about Julian and he picks her up in the bar and what they do next, you know, they go and they put pantyhose on their heads and go peek in people's windows. You know, like who would have thought that would be what they do after Julian picks her up in the bar. It's so odd. He's such an odd character. Uh,
mhm.
so I did love how this story kept surprising me.
Yeah, and you feel the depth of her life here, even though it is so short. I think where I stopped reading, where she did her time, we can kind of assume that is some kind of jail sentence. There's the mention kind of her mother and farm girls, and you just feel like this piece has a lot under the surface, which again, like with so much flash, I think um, the slipperiness makes you feel like the piece is floating a bit. So I really appreciate kind of the depth of this piece.
Mhm.
I did not get that they were putting the pantyhose on their head. I thought it was so weird that they were wearing pantyhose to go.
Yeah, I was confused. I was like, okay.
I was like, all right, that's a fetish. Sure, sure. That makes so much more sense. That it's
And he's the one who tells her to put the pantyhose on. So
right.
Jason's like, okay.
Do you think
Yeah.
it makes them
No,
harder to see, or just like if they get caught, nobody would know they were there, or nobody know it was them?
Yeah, it
Yeah,
smashes the features.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, because you're
yeah,
unidentifiable.
right, right.
Mhm.
And we didn't bring up something else that you just reminded me of, Sam.
Mhm.
Um, Julian, who took her in, identified and claimed her after Christina finished her time and was so adrift and alone. I thought mental hospital, and you
Oh,
thought jail, but time is usually what a jail reference.
yeah.
That's interesting. After Christina finished her time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got jail from that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it does make more sense. I don't know. I guess because she just took those pills.
Mm-hmm.
I put her, getting out of rehab or a mental hospital.
Yeah, it's kind of fun and tragic, of course, to have like a reckless female character that is kind of reckless in this like way we usually see like men in fiction, like a Dennis Johnson, like the cowboy images, as opposed to like self-harmingly reckless. I mean, she's definitely self-harmingly reckless with the pills, but she's also like kind of out in the world, kind of causing a ruckus and, being a peeping Tom as well.
do you feel like the ending of the story lives up to the kind of raucousness of the beginning? That's the kind of question I keep coming back to, is like, given this wild, like the character is kind of wild, the experiences up to that point are, they might they might be shaded with morality, or like, I don't know, something. Do you feel like the ending kind of responds to that in some way, or does it have to? I don't know.
I had to say, I mean, everything I really love in the story is in the beginning. And
Oh,
every detail in the beginning just feels so explosive and well placed that not one of those serial killers roving California freeways in the 1970s, the one Christina's mother had been obsessed with. Like, oh, that's fantastic. And also, Vacaville, you may not know this, is the home of the California Medical Institute, which is where they keep people like Charles Manson and the Onion Fill Killer. Like the major employer in Vacaville is this prison for people who have done things that are so crazy that they don't even have the word Vacaville in the name of the facility because no one wants to be associated with like where, I mean, he's dead now, but like when I was growing up there, like yeah, at one point like Squeaky Fromm had escaped and they were like looking for her in Vacaville.
Wow. Wow. Well, then that actually is important inside information in a way, right? That's where we are. So, like, I have a friend who's an art therapist for incarcerated mentally ill folks,
Mm.
which is wild, right?
Mm.
I was just talking to her yesterday. She said they have 250 beds, and anytime anybody's finished, there's five people in line for the bed. Like they're never empty. Well, let's try to answer Toby's question. Both of you, I guess you're almost Jason and Toby both seem to be saying the first part and the last part don't jive, don't parse. Is that am I putting words in your mouth, or is that just a succinct way of saying what you guys said?
Yeah, I think
Possibly.
that's accurate. That we have an amazing setup, and then the disagreement seems to be on whether or not the payoff is
Right.
Yeah.
commensurate.
Like one reading I might supply is like this moment is kind of redemptive, but that feels kind of simplistic or something, you know. Um, yeah, like, this the character finds peace. And
Hmm.
maybe that's the way that people want to read this story. I just think
Yeah.
that, yeah.
She's made it back to the beginning,
I
right?
I like the bus kind of crash scene, how that's written, because it almost feels like I can't really get a grasp on what's exactly happening, like you would feel in a moment like that, like seeing flashes. That really worked for me. I think that, you know, it's that last paragraph where I think we're connecting the animal first mention of like female mammal, etc., that's done so well in the beginning,
Hmm.
where um I think it's being asked to tie things up in a way that I don't necessarily need it to be tied up. I'd rather kind of maybe think more about kind of what we're talking about, like how in this moment this person has changed or not, rather than kind of tying up the story necessarily.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, because you're right, Sam. If she's changed, she didn't do anything to change. Change happened to her,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
But I guess part of that for me is, you know, she's gone back to the beginning, right? So it's kind of erased
Mhm.
all of the things that happened, you know? I'm not sure I see it as a redemption so much as an erasure of experience. Um, and I think I don't know. The ending did not bother me. I found it surprising and satisfying. I liked the disappearing type. It kind of seemed as if Christina was also being erased in that way, being blotted out, you know. So it worked. The ending worked for me. And I
It
was continually surprised by where the story went.
Yeah.
it it does also make me think of the writer who won the Booker this year, David Soloy. I listened to an interview with him where he was talking about how he finds literature novels often overstate like change in people, and he finds change to be much rarer. And in some ways, this story for me is about how, with that in mind, how like recklessness almost begets recklessness. Like her path feels much more likely than like the redemptive arc necessarily. And I don't know how that fits with like the animal chain of things, but I do feel like there's the chain of like girl to girl to girl, and then there's this chain of like recklessness, recklessness, recklessness. And they're not necessarily the same thing, but I think they're both happening in this piece.
That's a good reading. I appreciate that reading. That makes a lot of sense to me, at least.
Thank you.
Oh, and I agree entirely with Lisa that I never knew what was going to happen. And, you know, Sam, that description of the bus is just amazing. I feel like since so Slushies normally when it's poetry, most of the time I have to say, if I wasn't one of the decision makers of whether we would talk about it, I don't read it till we're in the room, right? But with fiction, we do have to read it. And as soon as I finished reading this, I went right back to the top and read it again. And then I went right back to the top and like skim read it again, kept in certain parts of it. And now we're reading it and I am not bored at all still. And I'm still looking at chunks and, you know, hearing what people have to say. And it's still paying off for me. I'm still having a good experience with it.
I have a one note to add, and this may be too poetic, but the title of the story is Colfax, Colfax. But to me, that reads as cold facts, which, you know, kind of seems like if you're confronting death, that maybe that's an appropriate title.
So then Colfax is the city, and then where Jason lived is like the neighborhood. Is that correct?
Colfax is pretty far from Vacaville. You'd have to drive like pretty far away.
Okay.
Yeah, Vacaville is much closer to San Francisco and Sacramento, and Colfax is like further in.
Okay.
It seems like she is driven from Vacaville to Colfax, and it says that in the second paragraph, half an hour later, she reached Colfax.
Okay.
And she was working in West Sacramento, which I certainly don't know California well enough to know how close any of those things are to each other. But
my touchstone is Lady Bird. I love that movie.
yeah.
Yeah. Are we ready to vote? Do we want to talk about more things?
I do. You know, when we do poetry, like at our last actual editorial meeting, we unusually had
And I think
two at least, maybe three poems that we did ask folks for edits on, right? And we usually accept it or don't accept it. Would anybody feel like we could ask for it to end with oh no, because Lisa likes girl, 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 saying like, is there an edit we could vote on, like vote as is and then vote with an edit? But I think our edits differ. Some of us love the girl, girl fade out, and some of us don't. And I think I'm the only one who complained about we live our lives with our ancestors as witness. I would take that line out if I could. Yeah. Okay.
I don't think I'd want to get into the mechanics of the story. I feel like if you pull one thread, the whole thing might unravel. So I would personally leave that to the author.
Yeah.
But I think if we accept it, you know, and they listen to this podcast, you know, it's sort of, you know, potentially they might rethink it a little bit. And I think we could be open to that as well if we did accept it.
Yeah, that's a smart idea, Sam. So Slushies also, so you know, sometimes people do send us work and then once we accept it, they go, oh, I've made these revisions. Here's the revised one. And very often we reject the revisions and say, no, we like the one we like. But there could also be a compromise. There's been a few instances of actually a little bit of a back and forth, you know, with an author. So yeah, that's reasonable. That's reasonable. So I think that means we are ready to vote.
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. Let me look at all of you at once. I'm zooming twice. All right. We're ready. 1, 2, 3. Vote. And it's in.
Woohoo!
Thank you so much,
Oh,
Patricia Q.
PQB.
Bidar.
PQB.
PBQ. It was meant to be.
Yeah, wonderful. So exciting. So this will be on episode 150. We are in 150. And does anybody have anything else to say? Other than thank you to Patricia Q. Bidar?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
It's so
you.
rare
Thank
to
you.
talk about fiction for me, so this is fun.
Yes.
I feel like I don't have the vocabulary yet, but we'll get there.
I mean, you know what? I always tell people is like, you have to read as a reader too. I think about that all the time. Like if I read this in a lit mag, I would have been satisfied. Absolutely. I would have been satisfied. And I probably would have even shared it with somebody to not know it alone. So I do think about that because sometimes we think we get a little more obsessive, as the editors. We're like, but what about this period? And if we were reading, we might not.
That's very true. That's
Yeah.
very true. If you just stumbled upon this story, you'd be like, wow, that's wild.
How different, right? How different is the story? Yeah, love it. Okay, all right. Well then, Slushies, please send us a note and tell us how we're doing. And we appreciate you too. Thank you for listening and keep on reading, everybody. Woohoo!
All right. See
Bye,
you
Bye,
later.
everyone.
Colfax by Patricia Bidar. Christina swallows the last of the loose pills from Julian's glove box. Within a few minutes, fresh energy blooms and fizzes within her. The sensation is of tumbling backward into space. Julian, a drug dealer so giant and peevish, the floor mats on the driver's side are bunched and ruined. Underneath his criminal veneer, Julian is just a mundane mammal who's driven Christina, an animal woman, to flight. Half an hour later, she's reached Colfax. In this heat, this fecund place. The car has mashed against the gas station's cashier hut. Years ago, when Christina was growing up here, this was a drive-in theater with a massive image of a vaquero on a rearing steed. Sweltering nights, Christina would watch movies with her lonely mother, car windows open wide, clasped in the smell of tomatoes, melons, and insecticide. Rain begins to pepper the hood. Christina rises into vegetal air. She doesn't recall opening the door. The window to the hut is dirty and rain-spattered. She peers between cupped hands at the empty stool inside, the bank of cigarette packs. Lightning cracks. After a few seconds, thunder rumbles. Christina presses her hand over her heart. Is she alarmed? Are the pills goosing her pulse? But she feels calm. The sky is a tight lid. It was a mistake stealing Julian's car. Julian, who took her in, identified and claimed her after Christina finished her time and was so adrift and alone. Christina was working as a server in a West Sacramento brewery. Her last customer on a slow Tuesday night was a black-haired guy in a cowboy hat, stiff-looking jeans, and a pearl-buttoned shirt. A face that seemed not to match the hair. "Lady," he said so low, she had to incline her head. "You think no one sees you. I do. I do." She joined Julian that very night on one of his quests. He was what her mother would have called a peeping Tom. He wanted her to wear nylon hose like he did. Why not? No one was getting hurt. It was simply watching women. Women when they were themselves and unaware they were being observed. In a word, seen. Julian was no rawhead, no slender man. not one of those serial killers roving California freeways in the 1970s, the ones Christina's mother had been obsessed with. Now she imagines someone peering in through the car door and seeing her, Christina, slumped behind the wheel. People idealize farmland, farm girls, as wholesome, green, yellow, and blue. The sky is cobalt now. 50 feet away is a bus shelter, sagging and white. A small form is hunched inside. Lightning again, and then immediately following that bass sky rumble, Christina runs. Inside, a child of about 9 swings its legs. Windbreaker, hood up. "Hello there?" Christina ventures. "I'm studying these ants," the kid returns. A girl. "Would you like a churro?" Christina cannot see the girl's face, but is struck by the way she sits. A bell buried deep inside of her toes. "Is this the bus stop for town?" Christina asks. The churros smell nice, hot grease and cinnamon. Christina used to make them for her little sisters. She thought she might become a baker one day. At least, when anyone asked, this is what she had answered. She should be hungry. "That's my car, in case you are wondering," Christina says. Nothing. She crouches down beside the girl. Dead at the service station. Lucky, I guess. The child considers this. Well, not really. She speaks patiently, the way Christina used to speak to adults at her age, as if they were her younger sisters, or the kids in the slow class at school, or the witless ladies in the school office. "On second thought, I'll take one of those churros," Christina says. But the girl has returned to her task, surveilling a line of ants. Christina's mind unspools the types. Velvet ants, pharaoh ants, Argentine ants, thief ants, the odorous house ants, and then, wasn't there a sugar ant? The smell of water-heavy crops and soil and chemical fertilizer thickens the air. All of the choices Christina has made in life have led her to this place. There's nothing left, she says aloud. "It depends on how you see it," the girl returns, pushing her eyeglasses up into place with a forefinger. Christina squints at the obscured face. Then the girl daintily lifts and lowers her hood and bares the side of her left pinky finger. The small oval scar is exactly like Christina's. "Did your mother tell you that people with 6 fingers and toes are giants sired by angels and human women? Something apart from God?" Christina said. "Those surgeries when she was 4. She says I'm a monkey." Christina remembers a long ago birthday party, her 9th, attended by 0 children. She feels the sky drawing her up then. At the same time, an inverted bowl of sky pushes down. It is like that optical illusion where you can't tell if the black horse is headed toward you or walking away. Hail pounds the roof of the shelter. The discs of ice flash under the bright lights of the gas pump island. The girl returns to dropping pinches of dough onto the ants, obeying their internal imperative, a perpetuation of their kind. Christina sees Julian preparing for bed, applying his eye cream, clapping twice to extinguish the bedside light. He refers to himself as cerebral. But what is so deep about dealing painkillers during the afternoon shift at the one-stop spy shop in Vacaville? Life with Julian had amounted to a slow and downhill slide, and that was for sure. "We live our lives with our ancestors as witness," the girl says at last. Her words hang in the air like wet almond blossoms. Christina has to ask, "Am I that? Am I alive?" An aurora consumes the sky. A silver bus is careening toward them from behind blue oaks, and a metal monster slips from the asphalt, rolls end over end, sky blotting, deafening. Images rise and blend and collapse. The blanched face of the driver, the silhouettes of passengers, one of whom is standing. Julian? Something blooms and expands in Christina's head. But there is no bus, no careening crash, only a fecund silence. And the girl tears a piece of the churro, nudging Christina's lips with the sugar and cinnamon confection. It is absolutely delectable and somehow still warm, like the corner of a golden kitchen in bygone evenings, a humming mother changing her dressings, an iron stove, and a gray kitten, satisfied and warm. Christina really, finally, is free. She has made it back to the beginning. Apart from time, the girl and Christina stand in the little windbreak like gingerbread children or figures in a Frida Kahlo painting. The girl takes her hand, and then it is she and Christina and the animal female chain extending into and past the vanishing point. Girl, 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 girl.